I think I've done at last count 128 Zoom calls since March on recruiting. So always fun where I can knock off a whole bunch of people in one fell swoop. so Brown University, certainly, it's known as one of the 8 Ivy League institutions. Predominantly, it's the school that provides, excellent in both academics and innovative research. When you're looking at schools like Brown University, the one thing about Brown that jumps off the page that you'll read about is what Brown calls the open curriculum. And what that basically is in the Ivy League, we're the only school that doesn't have any core requirements in order to graduate. It provides you with a greater amount of flexibility to be able to, sort of pick and choose those classes that have meaning in terms of the direction of where you want to go with your academic career. Again, it just provides you with again, a few more options that you may get as, if you want to major in economics and you go to, one of the other schools that may have a core curriculum. In addition to those economics classes, you'll be required to take your histories and your psychologies and everything else. The open curriculum still wants you to take lots of classes. They just don't want to tell you what those classes are. So that's the biggest difference really between Brown and the other 7 Ivy League institutions. There's 2 other things that I always like to mention that are very specific to Brown. One of them deals specifically with its medical school. Brown's the only Ivy League school where you can get accepted directly into its medical program right out of high school. Historically, if you want to go to become a doctor, you do your undergraduate, you take the MCATs, you apply to medical schools and hope you get into one that you like. This program here, which is pretty competitive to get into, sort of cuts through all that. You basically come in as a freshman and 8 years later, you graduate with your white coat and your stethoscope. So it's a unique program that I like to mention to those people that are interested in the medical field. The third thing that I like to mention that's specific to Brown is one that might be a little bit understated when looking at the university. You basically get 2 schools in one. In Providence, Rhode Island, which is where we're located, there's another school that's called the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD for short. RISD is a world-renowned arts and design school. It's a very difficult school to get into. Some might call it the artsy Ivy school. Brown students that are accepted are allowed to take classes at RISD and vice versa. RISD students can take classes at Brown at no extra charge. So once again, it provides with a greater amount of flexibility in terms of those classes that you can pick and choose from in sort of crafting what it is you want to do with your life academically. On the rugby side of things, we're, a fairly large program. Currently, we have over 80 athletes involved in the program. We are classified as a club sport. We're classified as a tier 1 club sport. There's only 2 or 3 tier 1 club sports at Brown, which means that we get a lot of the same privileges that many of the varsity sports are afforded. There's a growing trend these days, and in the news, you might have sort of seen a lot of universities that have started to transition varsity sports into club sports status. Brown was one of the first universities to do that back in the spring. And I think you're going to see more and more of that, particularly as a result of COVID. Financial constraints really have affected universities across the country. So, we're in a strong position when it comes to that. In fact, the president of Brown University has spoke several times, and I've been on several Zoom calls with her, and she's mentioned specifically the men's rugby program because it's really the model of what those transitioning sports are trying to reach. We've been at this since 1960, so we've been doing this quite a long time. And when you look at how the program is actually structured, we have a fairly large endowment that funds the program. Our record is very solid. We're 40% international. We have about 42% diversity on the team, and our team GPAs are well over 3.8 GPA. So the academic nature of the athletes that we have is pretty high. We sort of tick every box of what the university is looking for. There's a place for anyone and everyone within the program. We are a club sport, so there's no tryouts. Anyone and everyone that wants to come out is welcome to join the program. We sort of compartmentalize it into 2 groups. We've got a group of athletes that I would call my competitive group, and then the other guys would be in my developmental group. And those groups, you don't come in and aren't assigned a group. They're sort of fluid. Certainly the academic nature of Brown may mean that someone who's in the competitive group might have to take a semester or a year and transition into that more developmental group because of time restraints. And that's kind of the beauty of how we orchestrate, that balance. And it is a balance. It's really about trying to balance, the academic nature of Brown with the athletic nature of Brown. I have three assistant coaches. I'm a full-time paid employee of the university, which is a big bonus for me. I've been at Brown 24 years now, so I've been here quite a bit. I have 2 dedicated athletic trainers. We have a dedicated strength and conditioning coach. And one of the big benefits that we're allowed to do is because we're not classified as an NCAA sport, we're allowed to tour internationally once every year. So we've been very lucky in that we've gone on some pretty incredible trips over the last few years. COVID kind of put a kibosh on that last year, but we're hopeful that that's going to change in the next year or so. Like I said, the big benefit is the balance between the academic side and the athletic side. Brown's an academically challenging school, and I have to respect that for my athletes. So one of the big things that we don't want to do is burn you out with too much rugby. We will train 3 days a week, predominantly in the fall. That does include your strength and conditioning time. That's a little bit separate, and that's managed both as a team and as an individual. There's different components to that. Strength and conditioning is all tracked through an app in your phone. So, if you can't make a team event, then you can certainly get caught up, and I can see the results by tracking that there. We do compete year round. The fall is predominantly our 15 season. The spring is primarily our 7 season. But it's important that my players have downtime. It's one of the big components that I'm really, really, solid on in terms of making sure that my guys will have time to catch up on their studies, hang out with their buddies, be in a play, all things that are important to sort of college life here at Brown. In fact, we tend to get a number of athletes that, are involved in varsity programs that get kind of burnt out. And they enjoy being able to transition over to the rugby program and still maintain that competitive edge while staying current on their academics. Another big benefit to the rugby program is our alumni involvement. They are hugely responsible for a lot of things behind the scenes with the program, but they're also directly involved with things like internships, career advice, and in job placement. In fact, during COVID, one of the things that we've been able to do is we've had these Monday night Zoom calls. And these Monday night Zoom calls, they transition between 1 week a rugby related topic, and then the next week we'll alternate with a careers related topic. And we've been able to bring alumni back in who can connect with the players and talk about things like, where they've gone in medicine or finance or law or entrepreneurship or consulting. And it's been a really big benefit to tie the old in with the current players. The alumni certainly enjoy being able to talk about their experiences and then connect with some of the students, for internships and jobs. In terms of the application process, my process at Brown is pretty formalized in terms of the university. I'd say I'm probably the most formalized in the Ivy League. If you apply to Brown with rugby experience, you go into a database system with the admissions that's very similar to what you would go through with football, soccer, baseball, any of those other sports. Starting in July of every year, I have the ability to upload certain information and get some feedback from admissions on potential applicants. I will never get a yes or no. I don't have recruitment slots, but I do have a good relationship, and admissions does understand that what I'm trying to do is identify good students and athletes that may want to come to the university, and they're very appreciative of the work that I do. So we've had, as a result, we've had some pretty good success rates with getting kids into Brown. I'm always asked, what's the magic grade, or what's the magic SAT score, the ACT score to get into Brown? And that's a pretty complicated answer. What I like to do is when people are interested in looking at Brown, I like to compare apples to apples. So I'm going to hold off on the specifics of that unless someone wants to reach out to me directly. I can discuss your situation. But what I will tell you is that academic rigor is very important in the application process. Brown wants to see that you're taking challenging classes and doing well in those challenging classes. I certainly do have certain thresholds that I try to look and identify kids within, but it's not a one size fits all type of a situation. I've had kids that, as SAT examples that have had in the 1300s get accepted and in the high 1500s get rejected. So it's really tough to use those specific marks or grades in understanding that. I would say the sooner I can identify people, the more I can do to try to help you and advise you in the process. When you look at sort of the timeline of how things work, there's two admission processes. There's the early decision process for Brown. Those applications are due November 1st, and then there's the regular decision process, and those are to the beginning of January. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. But like I said, if you back out the timeline, if you're looking at applying during that early decision process, once you get into your senior year, it's really the junior and sophomore years that are going to count the most. Certainly your grades will be looked at, but you've got to do your work early on. So my advice to you guys is to make sure that you put the work in now. If Brown or any of the Ivies or any of the really high academic institutions are ones that you're looking at, because the work you put in now is going to pay off, tenfold down the line. There's a few other tricks of the trade specifically with Brown. And again, those are things that I'll go into, with people that have a specific interest. And I'm certainly, willing to answer any questions that people have right now about the process or the program. So thank you.
Thank you, Coach. And everybody, please feel free to put in any questions into the chat box. Our first question, do you have any information on the women's team that you can share with everybody here?
Sure. So interestingly, the women's program is classified as a varsity program here. Kathy Flores, who is the head women's coach, and I get along very well. We have a very solid relationship. Her process is a little bit different than mine in that she has to follow certain NCAA guidelines. However, for people that are interested in Brown specifically, Kathy knows that I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about the process and connect you with Kathy as well. I mean, Kathy's an excellent coach. She won a World Cup with USA Rugby and then went on to coach the national team for several years, and is now here at Brown for the last 5 or 6 years.
Now, Coach, what kind of financial assistance, if any, might be available for players looking to apply to Brown?
Sure. As in all 8 Ivy League schools, there's no academic or athletic scholarships available. All of us offer financial aid based on need alone. Brown's pretty generous when it comes to that, particularly for domestic students. Brown is what's called need blind in terms of admissions, meaning if you're a domestic student applying and you need financial aid, that doesn't factor into the equation until they've made a decision about your application. Once they've made that decision and they've decided to offer you a place here at Brown, Brown's stance is they're committed to meeting 100% of the demonstrated financial need of an applicant that they've accepted. The good thing about that need is it comes in the form of grants and not in terms of loans. So that's money that doesn't have to be paid back. I don't think we have any international students on this, but international students is a little bit different. It's need aware. Financial aid does come into the equation, so I'm always very upfront with guys that are applying about that. I had a call with a kid in England today about that. So.
And what level of rugby experience are you looking for in potential athletes? Do you find that you get people who played for a long time, or do you find that you have mostly, people who are newer to the sport coming into the program?
We get a pretty wide mix. I've had, this year alone, I've had 4 students accepted early decision. I'm going through the regular decision process. If you look at just those 4 guys that were accepted, I have one guy that plays international level rugby for Portugal. Another guy who's playing pretty high level in England. And then, another student that's probably a little less experienced. To me, there's sort of a place for anyone and everyone in the team, regardless of your skill level. Obviously, if you are a good rugby player and are good academically, I'm probably gonna, see, go to admissions and see what I can do to really make this happen. But that being said, even those students that have a limited rugby experience, I still like to accentuate sort of what you bring to the table with admissions. It's really the two tricks to the trade are, A, what is it about Brown that excites you for being here? That's the one thing Brown wants to know. But B, if given the opportunity to come here, how are you going to contribute to the environment here? Rugby is really the third thing, and that really comes into play mainly with me, in terms of where you fall within the team. But anyone and everyone has an opportunity to sort of earn a place within the starting lineup come fall season when we start getting back to work.
Great, thank you. Last call for questions for Coach Laflamme here. Anyone? No, I think.
have a question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, going back to like getting ready on the process, I'm a junior and I'm going into my senior year soon. So I've been like thinking about colleges a lot recently, and like for the process for sports, just applying to programs or trying to get into a college or sports program. Where do you think I should start if I'm going for a specific school?
Well, what I try, are you talking in terms of rugby or in terms of just applying to universities?
Rugby.
Okay. So, what I look for, and this has been a difficult year because there hasn't been a lot of rugby, right? Normally I look at tons of video on applicants and everything else. For a school like Brown, the timeline is right now is you're in your spring year semester. You want to be really focusing on your academics and looking at any SATs and ACT scores that may be coming available to take. You want to be, even though this year it was test optional, I'm not sure it's going to be test optional going forward. And certainly if you can take them, it will help your chances on getting in. Most of the guys that I deal with will take them at least once, if not twice. I've had guys take them as much as 4 times. So I like to see an SAT or an ACT done in the spring, potentially one done over the summertime, and then if need be, you've got the fall to try to knock another one out if possible. With respect to the rugby side of it, if there's video, send the video. I look at every minute of every video that's sent to me. I think it's important if the athletes put that together that I look at that for them. Recommendation letters, there's certainly, I want to talk to your coaches. I want to hear from other people that know about you from a rugby perspective. So I get a good sense of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how you'd fit into the program here. I have the ability, in addition to the references that you submit with your application, to get more references into the admissions department as well. People that are interested in applying to Brown through the rugby program, there's a document that I send out, and it really outlines a lot of very specific steps in terms of things that I get. I get copies of your transcripts. I'll get copies of your school profile. And I'll talk to your guidance counselors and make sure that we're all on the same page and that Brown is within reason for you. There's either Brown may be out of reach, it may be within reach, and it may be certainly within the wheelhouse. And I'm not going to, sort of pull the wool over your eyes and tell you, yeah, you're going to get in if it's going to be more of a reach. That's why it's important for me to see all this information up front so that I can educate you and your parents into sort of where you stand so that you can make educated decisions about what schools you're applying to. The other thing that certainly is difficult to do right now is go look at any schools you're looking at. Right now you can only do that virtually, but you want to do your homework there, know what you're getting into, understand the differences. But there's even though 8 of us are Ivy schools, there's some huge differences between each of the 8 Ivy schools, and knowing what those are like is really important because it's a big chunk of your time. You're going to be spending at least 4 years here. So it's important that you know that. Connect with players. I connect potential applicants with my players so you can have pretty frank conversations. You want to know what it's like on a Saturday night here. You want to know what I'm like. You want to know what the players think of me as a coach. So it's all about do your homework, do it all up front and do it early. Don't wait until the last minute. I can tell you this year, I had several guys reach out to me in December, saying, Coach, I'm going to be applying in 2 weeks to Brown University. There's not a real lot I can do other than put you on my list that I send to admissions. The sooner I can get to you, the more we can talk about the process, the essays, and all this stuff. So it's really about sort of understanding specifically how you are going to be affected by the process and doing that up front.